everyone. Welcome to the Studio Art Department's lecture series. And tonight we are starting with our artist in residence, Sonya Kelliher Combs. So before we start though, I'd like to remind you all to please turn off your cell phones and computers, anything that beeps, squeaks, or lights up. So for those of you who don't know me, I'm Professor Brenda Garand of Studio Art. And shall we begin? Everyone have a seat? Okay, so today it's my great pleasure to introduce Sonya Kelliher Combs, who makes sculpture, drawings, paintings, installations, and public art. She was born in Bethel, Alaska, and raised in Nome, and currently lives in Anchorage. Sonya is Inupiat, Athabascan, Irish, and German. She received her Bachelor of Fine Arts from the University of Alaska Fairbanks and Master of Fine Arts from Arizona State University. Sonya said, and I quote, "I went to college and I thought I would be a lawyer, and I took an art class and never looked back, so I became an artist." Sonya uses skin, fur, walrus stomach, human hair, steel needles and pins, beads, wool, beeswax, acrylic gel medium, thread, paper, fabric, and wire, amongst other materials. Her work speaks about psychological and emotional abuse, suicide, social ills, marginalization, and the struggles of indigenous people. Sonya herself has lived off the land, hunting, fishing, and gathering food supplies for the winter, and she also makes utilitarian objects, such as clothing and jewelry. Since Sonya has a very extensive resume, I will be highlighting only some of her accomplishments. Solo exhibitions include Kupak, Pratt Museum, Homer, Alaska, Where They Overlap, Gorman Gallery, UC Davis, California, Hyde, Museum of Contemporary Native Art, Santa Fe, New Mexico, and this was at the National Museum of Indian Art in New York City as well. Walrus Family Portrait, International Gallery of Contemporary Art, Anchorage, New Secrets, Wells Street Art Company, Fairbanks, Unraveled Secret, Institute of American Indian Arts Museum, Santa Fe, Idiot Strings Catch and Release, Alaska State Museum, Juneau, Alaska. Group exhibitions include This Is Not a Silent Movie, Museum of Contemporary Craft, Portland, Oregon, and the Museum of Art and Culture, University of Montana in Missoula. Mask and Transparencies, Orenda Art International, Paris, France. Dry Ice, Robeson Art Center, Princeton, New Jersey. Native Voices, Contemporary Indigenous Art, 5 Miles Gallery, Brooklyn, New York. Changing Hands, Art Without Reservation, Part 2, and Alaska Native Art and Culture Festival, Smithsonian Museum of Natural History, Washington, D.C. Awards and fellowships include the Rasmussen Fellow, Governor's Individual Artist Award, the Eiteljorg Fellowship for Native American Fine Art, the Arctic Education Foundation Academic Excellence Award, and the Anchorage Mayor's Arts Award. Her work is included in many collections. A few are the Anchorage Museum, Alaska State Museum, University of Alaska Museum of the North, British Royal Museum in London, England, Nation Museum of the American Indian, the Eiteljorg Museum of American Indians and Western Art in Indiana. Sonya has been board of director at the Nome Native Arts Center and for the Alaska Native Arts Foundation, and is on the Institute of American Indian Arts Board. In 2007, I saw these incredibly powerful little sculptures in American Indian Art magazine. They were titled Guarded Secrets and made of hide, gut, and porcupine quills. Oval forms with quills piercing the hide and showing the interior and exterior space. A void made real. They were raw, tough, and delicate, imbued with the fierceness of intention. Please help me welcome the woman, daughter, sister, wife, and artist who made them, Sonya Kelliher Combs.
Okay, everybody, you ready? I'll try to keep it to 40 minutes. I think I have 51 images, so we can turn down the lights a little bit, please. Thank you. So first, just like Brenda said, my name is Sonya Kelliher Combs. My Nupak name is Asiangatuk, which means the sweet berry. I'm named after my great-grandmother, Asiangatuk Brower from Barrow, Alaska, originally from Shishmaref, Alaska. And I am an artist living and working in Anchorage, Alaska. My family hails from the villages of Barrow, Nulato, which is a small little Athabascan village on the Yukon, and Nome. I've lived many places in our state, but to be an artist in Alaska, which I'm sure you can imagine is a hard thing, the best place to be is in the big city. It's easier to get material, it's easier to sell your work and share it, and it's easier to be around other practicing artists. So that's why I'm there. First, I want to say anamasi, thank you to the students, the staff, and faculty here for this wonderful opportunity. And I also want to give a special thank you out, Guyana, to my Vannas, the people who helped me install my show, the wonderful Sarah, Sean, Ryan, and Matt, who are over there, our interns for this semester at Dartmouth. Thank you very much. They helped me hang and thread needles, over 4,000 needles actually, and install my work. And also a very special thank you, Guyana, to Brenda, Jerry, and Sunny, and all the rest of the staff for allowing me to come and share my work with you, and also to create new works, which is super exciting, and to experience this wonderful landscape. And I was telling Brenda and Jerry the other day, if I left tomorrow, I've already had the most amazing experience and met some of the most beautiful people I've ever met. So thank you for this. Okay, on to my next one. So this is the landscape outside of Nome, which is where I grew up. This is in the fall, and we do have some oranges and reds in there. So that's mostly blueberry bushes that you see that red color there. We don't have very many trees. And this is the frozen Bering Sea right outside of Nome. So our ocean freezes all the way over. You could walk all the way to Russia. No, we can't see Russia. But, and if anybody asks me any questions about her, you know I've met her, but that's where it ends. So, yeah, so this is, so we live in a harsh environment. I don't live in Nome anymore, but definitely my work is influenced by a sense of place, and particularly the tundra and the harsh environment. So we spent a lot of time searching for animals to go hunt, subsistence activities, berry picking, gathering greens, and living off the land and living in the nature, living in the land. And that's where I think I learned to be the person that I want to be, was being out in the country. And these are muskox. My mom and dad just got a moose 2 weeks ago. They've processed it, hung it, and it's in the freezer. And so it's an important part of our life. There's 6 kids in our family, so we needed a lot of meat. It's very expensive to live in the village. This was a really old picture, and that's me, actually. So my grandmother's house is that big gold one, my grandma and grandpa's house. My dad was born and raised there. It was built in 1906. It's one of the oldest homes in Nome. Most of the community burned down multiple times. And that brown house that I'm walking towards is where we grew up. So we grew up next to our grandparents. We have a very close family. Extended family in Indigenous and Alaska Native communities is commonplace, and a lot of times your grandparents live with you or live next door to you. And when my grandparents retired and downsized, they built that little yellow house on the other side. I think they really like that color. And it's connected by a deck. Nowadays, my parents are in that little golden house. They've retired, and my brother Ed owns the brown house. So this is where we spent from mid-May to mid-August. That's our camp. Imagine 6 kids in there. It was a crowded house, but every single day, I'd wake up at 6 a.m. and go prospecting with my mom. We were gold miners. So not only were we extracting minerals from the ground, we were also picking berries and greens and hunting and fishing and all of that stuff. So it was an interesting lifestyle. Nowadays, I think about it and think how people must think it was really odd, but it was really natural for us to do that. My grandfather came over with the gold rush from Ireland with his father. Here are some of our subsistence foods. And I forgot to bring my salmon. So that's from this year. That's our salmon from my smokehouse this year, and there's some blueberries. And does anyone know what this one is, the black and white one down here? Anybody? Has anybody been to Alaska? Is anybody from Alaska? Yay, we got some people in there. We'll talk later. So this is muktuk, which is a delicacy of Inupiaq people. It's whale blubber and whale skin. It's packed full of protein. It's delicious. We eat it raw, or you can boil it, or you can pickle it. There's all sorts of ways to eat it. And people trade for fish. They trade muktuk and muskox and so on. And so it's a commodity. And then the bottom picture there, you see we're butchering a moose. That's a really old picture because my brother, who's in that green hat now, is 33. So I'm getting lost. I don't know where I am with my cards. So this is my mom and my grandfather panning for gold. And I don't know if any of you have seen that Bering Sea Gold Show. I've seen like one. I got trapped in a hotel. But you know, it's brought a lot of miners back to our community. But Nome is it's not historically a village in that exact spot. It was like a fish camp, a nomadic, fish camp. And so the reason it's there is because of the gold rush. And so my grandfather, he got the gold fever, although he couldn't support himself, and we're not really rich, but he actually was a magistrate, and eventually he was a marshal, a magistrate, and then a judge. He was appointed as a judge. And then on the right-hand side, that's my dad, Patrick Kelliher, and he's cleaning salmon berries. And he actually knows more Inupiaq than me, but he's full Irish, so, it's very interesting. Okay. It's embarrassing pictures, but this is my family. And we actually, I'm the second oldest of 6, and these are our high school graduation pictures. Here's my parents. When my parents met, my dad said it was love at first sight. And so my sister Carla's the oldest, then me, and then my brother Edward and my brother Christopher, and then Allison and Brendan. He's the baby. And these are some old pictures. In the sled is my dad, Patrick, with his 2 siblings on Front Street in Nome. And then my mom, as a future hunter there, she is a good hunter, holding up a crane with her friends Carl and Merle. My sister Carla's named after Carl. There were many floods in her village, so there are very few pictures of our family from that side of the family in particular. This is my mom's family. The reason I'm giving you kind of this historical lesson is because, like, telling you where I'm from is because it gives context to the work. And what is essential to me is to create work that is true to who I am and where I come from. So we're all connected, and my family and the history of my family is really important, and the continuation of our family as well. So these are all things that impact the work that I create. So my mom, this is on this side here, is Ruth and Johnny Summer. Those are her parents, and she had 4 other siblings, and then her mom died from tuberculosis. She was adopted by her mom's sister, Alice, and her husband, Eddie. So that's my grandpa Eddie and my grandma Alice, and her 4 adopted siblings, Uncle Barney, Auntie Eleanor, Auntie Ida, and Auntie Miranda. And then that cute little one down there is my mom, and her nickname was Dumplings, all the way through high school. I still meet people. She went to a boarding school, as many Alaska Native children did. And I'll still meet people, and they'll be like, "Who's your family?" And I'll say who my family is, and then they'll be like, "Trudy Hildebrand, Trudy Hildebrand." And then I'll be like, "Dumplings," and then they'll be like, "Oh, dumplings." It's totally hilarious. So I want you also to note that a lot of this traditional clothing or historical clothing is really, my grandma made all of that. And so these are things that are passed down from generation to generation, sewing techniques and patterns, actual patterns of the mukluk shape and also of the trim that we use. This is my father. I was telling you I had a really complicated family. I have a dad and I have a father, which is a great thing. When you're growing up, maybe not so much, but nowadays it's a good thing because we have a really rich background to glean, or to what's the word I'm looking for? Anyhow, so this is my father, Jim Stotts. His family is from Barrow, and that's where my Newback name comes from, his grandma. So on the right-hand side, that's my grandma Mary. She's the youngest of 13 children to Charles and Asiengatuk Brower. He was a whaler from upstate New York. He was with a whaling company, and he went to Barrow, and he met my grandma, and he married her, and he stayed there and had a trading post. And he's a pretty famous guy in that area. As a matter of fact, Barrow's right here, and Browerville is right here where all the Browers live. It's connected by a road with a jetty. There's a bunch. I'm related to everybody there. So, and also I want you to note these 2 shapes, the tusk forms on their parkas, because that is indicative of a specific of Inuit people, Inupiaq people. And it's a shape or a form that I use often in the work that I create. I'm going to run out of time, I can tell already. Okay, so these, I wanted to show you, since this is an undergraduate program. These are works I made my freshman year. There's a portrait of my boyfriend at the time, who I am married to now 20 years. Sean Combs, but not Puff Daddy. And this is me, although it might not look like me, but it really does. It did at the time. I was in a place. And this is me as an undergrad. That's at my Bachelor of Fine Arts exhibition. I had over 20 paintings and a series of probably 11 prints. And this is, the largest size was 5 foot by 7 foot, and this is one of those. It's called Thunderbird. Really interested in things like the form line design, which is a Northwest Coast design, what you consider kind of totem pole art, breaking apart forms of animal and human, and also putting every single color in the rainbow. These are 2 other pieces from that same period, 6 foot by 4 foot, acrylic underlay, oil overlay, transformation of animal and human forms, really looking at people like de Kooning and maybe some Cubist influence, all of those things. Those are things that I was thinking about when I was making these, as well as looking at people like Jim Chopert, who's a really well-known Tlingit artist, and who was doing similar breaking apart of these very rigid form line designs and recreating his own patterns. Then I went to graduate school. Yeah, so this is one of my first pieces from graduate school. I went to Arizona State University. I don't know what I was thinking at the time. I was thinking I wanted to eat outside at night, and And also, I wanted to go somewhere that was really culturally diverse, and that was one of the main reasons I chose Arizona State. I went, it was a 3-year program, and I created this my first year, and these. My work was getting more figurative, it was getting more monochromatic, less color, a lot of line, a lot of drawing. These are small drawings, probably, 24 by 36 or 30 inches or something like that. And I did hundreds of these that year, trying to figure out what was important to me. And I was just getting more and more lost. I felt alone, and eventually my husband came halfway through the year, and it was a little bit better. But I always went home, thank God I wasn't there in the summertime. So I'd come home, and then I'd be with my family. And this is my great-grandmother, Martha Peter. She was married to the first chief of Nulato, and she's wearing her fancy parka. I wanted to show you this and show a painting that I made my second year in graduate school. Things became simpler, more minimal, but there was more content in there. It was softer, it was maybe more contemplative. So this is a trim piece based on my grandma's parka trim. There, my grandma was always, she was a big leader in their community. She adopted 2 of her children. She rescued my grandfather. His father didn't want him, so he put him out in the land, and she went and found him. So she's so beautiful. And then this is my grandpa, Eddie Hildebrand. I wanted to show this because he's got on some idiot strings, which are the mitten tethers that your mom makes you wear so you don't lose your mittens. And I don't know, I still have them. My sister made me some knitted mittens, and she knew I was going to lose them. So, and then on the right-hand side are some mittens. I made my first pair of sealskin mittens it was probably maybe my 3rd year of undergrad. And my sister Carla, who's a really amazing seamstress, she made this beautiful cussbuck I'm wearing right now. She's just amazing. Anyhow, she was teaching me how to make sure my stitches were right, and she made me rip it apart 3 times. It was not, needless to say, I haven't made any more. So I make other things. They don't have to be so perfect. So these are my mom's, or my sister Carla's slippers that my grandma Alice made. Tragically, my grandpa's, my mom's second mom, she died when I was born. She died in a plane wreck. So she would use this rose pattern and this trim pattern, that black little pattern around the edge, and she was really well known for her rose pattern. So I started doing these pieces, and I'd brought with me all these materials from home my second year because I realized I needed to have some of that with me, and it was really important. And I started using that material. At first, it just hung in my studio. I had like seal skins and like a walrus stomach and some seal gut hanging off my wall. And all of a sudden, I started emulating it. I started making synthetic, and then I would hang the sealskin next to a painting of a sealskin or something that looked like hide or a walrus stomach next to a stretched piece of walrus stomach. And I was experimented with that a lot, trying to make a synthetic skin. But sometimes I'd work with one of these little guys. I call them scraps. A scrap is from a series that is based on the idea of the time you spend with your mom or your grandma, maybe with your dad or your grandpa, your uncle, your aunt, your sister, time spent learning something. It doesn't even matter what you were learning. Maybe you're learning how to change the tire. But in this case, it was about skin sewing and beading. And my mom used to give us little pieces of material, and she would sit there with us, and we would try to copy what she was doing. And it's about that time that you spend with your family learning these things. You can never get that time back, but it's so important. It helps you become who you are and learn patience and learn how to listen and learn from observation. So I wanted to show this is a purse, a bag that my grandmother Mary gave me. Because these patterns, I mean, they're everywhere. They're still in my work, these trim patterns, and that's a painting of mine next to it, just juxtaposing some of that. Okay. And then these are some artifacts from St. Lawrence Island. Alaska Native people, as many indigenous people we do, is they would adorn all their implements. It didn't matter what it was. It could be a little tiny needle case. It imbued that with power and ownership and pride. So all of these shapes, like I use this circular shape, traditionally it would often be put onto a hunting implement or a mask or a dance fan, and basically it would allow the spirit of the animal that had been harvested to return back to the spirit world and replenish. I use the circular form a lot because I think it's important. It's a release, it's an opening, it's a passageway to somewhere else. Those are my mucklucks with my grandma's design and some circular forms. Okay, I'm running. How much time do I have? Okay, so this is stretch walrus hide, and this is a painting that I created my third year in graduate school. It's poured polyurethane, and it's got all sorts of like porcupine quill and scars that I've pulled out string to create these kind of scabs. As we all know, there's an epidemic of violence in our world, and the psychological, emotional, physical, sexual abuse of an individual it's huge, and that's what this work is about. A lot of my work is kind of heavy, and but I have to do it. It's important for me to say it because so many people are hiding all of these painful things, and the only way we can promote healing is to speak and let it go, or at least move it on. So these are other pieces from graduate school. I think these are the only other two I have, and then we'll talk about new work. These are synthetic skins. The only part of that, any of those pieces that are any kind of hide, is the walrus stomach, two circular shapes in the gold piece called inlet. It originally started as a 6-foot by 4-foot painting, and it stretched and became a 3.5 by 7-foot painting. It's suspended off the wall with some hooks I made, and this one's untitled on this side. A lot of reference to the body, maybe to clothing, maybe to bedding. There's, here's some pictures of us. This is my little sister Allison. It's a long time ago. She's a doctor now. She's still in high school here, I think. And me cleaning walrus stomach. It's really hard work. I will pay for a walrus stomach because it's so much work. But people still bring me frozen walrus stomach, so, now that I'm in the city, it's harder to get that. So in 2000 and maybe 6 or 8, somewhere in there, I took taught this wonderful class with a woman named Fran Reed, who does these, she's passed away now, but she's an amazing fish skin artist. We did these beautiful salmon and halibut skin baskets, and we worked together. And she was using hog intestine as well. And I was like, oh my goodness, this material is so amazing. So that's me blowing up hog intestine. And I'm not actually, I'm not touching it. There's a pipe there, so it's okay. And it's just, I get it from the butcher. It's used for sausage casing, and it is really beautiful. So this is it on my light table at home. I actually brought some with me in a cooler that I will be blowing up in the next week. So I didn't know if you guys had a place where I could get that. So here's some newer work. This is called Red Corner. It's seal intestine, cheesecloth, acrylic polymer, and nylon thread. I use a lot of natural material, and a lot of times I use fur. This is a stretched sea lion hide that I've shaved. This is from a series called Brand. It's about man's imprint on nature. I took all sorts of hides from Alaska, and I branded them in different ways. This is another one. This is the one that's at the British Royal Museum. This is called Reindeer Brand, Red Reindeer Brand. It's not big, it's maybe, I don't know, something like this. It's pretty small, 24 by 16 or something like that. There's a series of 20 of them at my show Hyde at the National Museum of the American Indian in Manhattan at the Gustav Hyde Center. This is another circular piece. It's called Sky Pour. This is all synthetic. It's all a paint skin. You can kind of see the frame around the edge. What I'm interested in is like this kind of the translucency, being able to, see within, and also to create, opaque passages as well. So some stuff is hidden, some stuff is revealed. It's an installation shot from the International Gallery of Contemporary Art. For those of you who ever want to show in Anchorage, Alaska, it's a beautiful nonprofit gallery, and they help with shipping, and they take applications from all over the world, and they do wonderful programming. And this is from a series called Walrus Family Portraits. I was talking about that tusk shape that I use often, which is representative of, my Inuit heritage, my Inupiaq heritage, and so this is from that. And this is another, it has 3 rooms, this space, so you can kind of create 3 different installations. And so I'm showing you some Walrus Family Portraits. This is called Cream Walrus Family Portrait with red. I think it's 3.5 feet by 6 feet, something like that. It's a large synthetic piece. The only portion of it that is not is the tusk shapes that you see within there, and those are walrus stomach. So a lot of people think it's encaustic. It's really interesting. I like the play on using a material that's synthetic, that's plastic, that's alongside a natural fiber that would have been used as a breathable rain gear or a window covering, being able to protect you. And now it's all about plastic. Our world is a plastic world. This is called Watermelon Walrus Family Portrait. It's weird to see them so gigantic, because this is like, I think it's 48 by 48 maybe. Similar scale. There's a little bit of glare on that one. That's called a Natural Walrus Family Portrait. So even after 15 plus years, I'm still using this shape. I don't know what it is about it. I'll go into the studio and I'm like, God, Sonya, you got to try something new, and I just keep on coming back to it. I just think it's filled with there's all sorts of metaphor. It's male and female. I'm doing, this is another white walrus family portrait with blue. This is it's on panel. This is not the synthetic skin. It's poured polyurethane, and I've drilled back into it, incised into it, cut into it with my X-Acto knife, and buried pigment within it and stitched into it. 24 by 24 inches, not very big. And then I also do this form in the 3-dimension. So this is called common thread. And common thread is basically, it's reindeer and sheep rawhide. They're all individuals, just like we are, but they're all connected by a single thread. It's a simple idea, but I think it's an important one. It's that we're all in this together. Our world is changing, our environment is changing, and even though we're all different shapes, sizes, colors, religions, everything, that's what this is about, in a larger sense. So this is a continuation of that idea This is called Unraveled Secret. There's a variation of this at the exhibition you'll see later. This is the one that all my little Vannas helped me with, hanging, threading needles. This was about 3,000 needles. I installed this at the Museum of Contemporary Native Art in Santa Fe. This composition's a little bit different than the one that is in the exhibition. That this is a single thread. It doesn't break, it continues on. I had 3 Institute of American Indian Arts students threading this as I was doing it, and they were fantastic. These 2 huge Navajo boys sitting on the floor. It was so hilarious in the middle of it. Like they had a snow day and they all still came. It was awesome. So it took 3 full days to install this piece there. But at the end of at the very end here, you see the thread is, it comes out, it becomes unraveled, and it becomes this big ball on the floor. So these are some idiot strings. These are my first set of 3-dimensional idiot strings. So social patterns are very durable and difficult to change, but they can change slowly over time. And so I've been talking about patterns and cycles and that reoccur within my work, but also in the world, you know. So I've lost 3 uncles, my mom's brothers, to suicide, and we've lost 3 cousins. This is in memory of our 3 uncles and the 1 cousin who had committed suicide at this time. It's an epidemic. Alaska Natives are 3 times more likely to commit suicide than any other population in the United States. Okay. So this is walrus stomach and human hair. This piece is a variation of this piece is installed over at the Jaffe Fried. How do you say that? Is that right? Jaffe Fried. Okay. So this installation, Idiot Strings, 6, it was called 6, is not a memory to any one person. It speaks to the countless number of lives that have been lost needlessly to suicide. They represent our connection to those who've passed and help us remember. And these are the ones that Brenda was talking about. These are just 3 of them. I've made a set of 40 that are on their way to Switzerland right now for an exhibition there in November. But these are our guarded secrets. It's porcupine quill and walrus stomach, this specific set. It's from a series dealing with the protected secret, one shielded from the outside and fortified from the inside. So this shape it's not only a walrus tusk shape, it's not only male and female, but this little pouch form can become a vessel that we can hide our stuff in. And I've done so many different variations on secrets. These are portable secrets. We can bring them along with us. Some are bigger, some are smaller. I think I was telling Sunny she might need a big one. I'm just kidding. Anyhow, we all have our own secrets, personal, family, cultural. Some are bad and some are good, some are fun, but we all have them. It's something we can all relate to. These are large secrets. They're big ones. Some are closed, some are open, some are made from men's ties, some are made from found bed sheets. Some are made of rawhide or walrus stomach or intestine or a number of things. These are called small white secrets. They're made from pig intestine and found bed sheets. And these are small secrets. And there's a set of, these are over at the end. We installed them closer and they look better. Thank you, Sarah. It was a space limitation, but it worked out. It's a nice, happy surprise. Okay. Oh, I'm running out. I'm lost. Oh, I know where I am. So this is called red curl, and there's 2 different sets of curls over there. My shapes are changing a little bit. They're more open. You can see inside more. They're more, these are very kind of sensuous and very skin or flesh-like. This set is not there, but what I'm really interested in all of the work is the shadow that's created, the line, movement, and look at that red shadow there. I just think that it's not just about the individual piece, it's about how it interacts with the environment, how people interact with it. This piece is in a collection in Anchorage. This is probably the most recent large installation I've made. This is called Black and White. This work was made specifically for the Anchorage Museum True North exhibition. And remember, I showed you the picture of Muktuk earlier. So these black and white suspended pieces are referencing Muktuk, which is one of our biggest subsistence on the North Slope. And it's in direct response to our new subsistence, which is the oil industry. Beneath each one of these pieces of Muktuk, which are completely plastic, they're synthetic, is a jarring jar, like that we would jar our fish or our muktuk in, or our jam, or any number of things, our meat, but now it's been replaced with oil. So, not only do I do this work that's my own personal work, but I also curate from collections, and this is one exhibition I did curating from the collection. I was invited to go into the collection at the Anchorage Museum and go through everything and install. And previously, all of the people who had come and done it had picked up pieces that they loved, and they just hung them on a wall. But what I wanted to do was say something with the pieces that I love. And so this piece in particular is called Consensus. It's against the census of Native people. And so all of these people, I put out an email, and they started giving me their BIA cards. That's a certificate of their certificate of Indian blood. That's a card that we as Native people carry around with us to certify that we're Indian or we're Eskimo or we're, and what quantum we are, what our blood quantum is. So all these people came and gave me their card. I blacked out their number, but it was amazing. Like, people really wanted to be a part of it. It was important for them to, make a stand. And what I did was I took objects from the collection. This is Yupik, and this is Yupik, a Yupik person in a Yupik jacket. Although they don't even use our names. They don't even use Inupiaq or Yupik half the time. We're just Eskimo. This is the whole installation. So there's several different groups of objects to make a commentary on issues facing our people today. This one in the front is called Forgive You, Father, for You Have Sinned. And it's these plastic rosaries. When you go through a catechism, they give you, after First Communion, you get one of these plastic rosaries. And it's just a commentary on the abuse of churches in our communities. It's replaced our food in a lot of cases and our culture in many cases. And this is Goodbye. It's, I love mitten forms. They become like a host. They're the place they hold somebody's place. And when they're empty, they're gone. So this is called Goodbye, and it's in memory of I think it was 38 people in 2005 who committed suicide, Alaska Natives, who took their own life. And then I think the last pictures are pictures of my studio and my honey, maybe. That's my honey, Puff Daddy, and me, out in the wilderness. And this is my studio, and that's one of our dogs. That's Pepperoncini. We have 3 poodles. And this is my studio in the summertime. It's a beautiful place. I want to thank you all again very much for having me here. And if you have any questions, I don't know if we have time for questions because I really talked too long. I know we did. Huh? Do we have any questions? Anybody have any questions? Go ahead.
Could you, when you exhibit these like idiot strings, what's the response of, say, family members or the community at large?
You know, it's really, it can be really, it's really hard. People just stand there and cry sometimes. But also people are really appreciative that people are talking about it. Because really, it's a taboo. It's like no one talks about any of these terrible things that are happening. And I'm not the only one talking about it. You know, there's a lot of artists who are addressing some of these really hard social ills, you know, that are brought on by colonization. I mean, really, that's what it's all about. It's like, you know, we don't know who we are anymore. We're trying to figure out our place in the world. You know, and all of these things are symptoms of that. So, are there any other questions? Thank you very much. Oh, go ahead. Okay. I have to wait.
When you're
You're so
in your studio starting, say, like one of your secret pieces,
Uh-huh.
how do you begin something like that?
You know, it's so hilarious. I wrote this article for an art magazine back home, and they wanted to know about my process. And it really made me think about my process. And you know, when I'm in the studio, like, I kind of know what my series, what I'm going to be, like what series it's coming from, whether it's like a Poor, an Idiot String, or a Secret, or Walrus Family Portrait, and that's all I know, you know. It seems to me like, you know, I don't know if it's going to have any color or, you know, any of that stuff. But I'm not one of those artists who, unfortunately, I'm not one of those artists who goes every day from 8 until 5. It's like feast or famine. I'll be there for like, you know, 5 months straight till 2 in the morning, and then I have nothing for like a month or two. You know, it's hard. It's like, I don't know if any other artists have that issue, but it has to be there. You know, I have to be in that place to be able to make these things. And when I'm not, then I just make my jewelry or my small objects. I was going to show pictures of like my purses that I make and stuff, but you know, that's a different time. You know, it's a quieter time. So, go ahead, Matt.
I've already asked you like a million questions about your work, but hearing you present it to us and how you're explaining, you know, this is our walrus, this is important about my work. How much of your content is intended for which audiences? Because there's obviously a lot of different audiences for your work. You know, it's shown in Anchorage, it's shown here, it's shown in.
You know, that was kind of what I was trying to say at the beginning, but not very articulately, is that I think that these shapes, a lot of these forms are pretty universal, especially the male and female kind of reference, which I think is really good, and it is intended. And I would hope that people could read it, you know, bring their own stuff to it. But I think this is kind of a cop-out, but I don't really think about my audience when I'm making my work. There is not an intended audience. I want it to go to as many, have as many viewers as possible, but sometimes it doesn't go anywhere. Part of it is the most important part to me, is like the creative part. And people who know me and my studio, as soon as it's done, if it doesn't get out of there, then I'm just gonna ruin it. So, you know, it's like I'll overwork it or whatever, but I have to put it away. I have a section in my studio that is just a storage room. In other words, it's open season. So, yeah. I guess, did that answer your question a little bit? Okay. Go ahead, Kathy.
A lot of your work, obviously, within your wellness and relating to your growing up, is related to family. And I was wondering, what kind of balance in your life do you have between school life?
I was going to talk about it. It's in my notes.
Yeah.
You know, I was just telling, I think, I can't remember if I was telling the interns or not, but, or maybe Jerry, but there's certain times a year I don't go anywhere. It doesn't matter. I mean, maybe if I got into the Whitney, I might consider it. But, you know, in the summertime from mid-June till mid-August, I really don't go anywhere because that's our subsistence time. And I'm barely in the studio then. I'm not making that work. I'm fishing, I'm berry picking, I'm hunting, and preparing for the winter. That's an important time of the year. And in Alaska, nobody schedules anything during that time period. You know, the winter time is when all the stuff gets done, when we all come together. Everybody else is out at their fish camp and, you know, doing their stuff. So it's a good question. I did have it in here somewhere. There's probably some other stuff I forgot to say, I'm sure. But is there any other questions? I hope that you all come to my show. Is it now, guys? Is it now? Okay, so come, please come. Thank you.